Power on.
The following is a presentation of the Sovryn Tech Podcast Feed.
Woo, the man of tomorrow is here for you, baby. The Golden Stallion, Savzu, the rated R radio star, Dr. Brian Sovryn. And not only am I here for you, but I was there for, where's there? I was there for the Vonu Podcast, which it had been, well, I was on for their 200th episode. We did do a panel for that, and that was amazing. But it has been a while since I talked to Shane at the Vonu Podcast. And I mean on the order of years. I was on, like, I don't know, back when the show was just in the double digits, you know, that many years ago. And it was a great time then. It's a great time here. This was an episode that, I mean, part of it, you know, I was talking about giving an update on Sovryn Tech, giving an update really on like where consumer technology is at right now. I mean, Shane asked me to be on, you know, he's like, yeah, let's talk things up. Let's see where tech's at. Is there anything exciting going on and all of that? And I imagine we'll have, we had talked kind of off air of doing a revisit on some of that because there was so much to talk about. You know, we didn't get into all of it. But I highly recommend listening to this episode. It was a great honor to be asked to be on. It was awesome to be on. Shane does amazing shit, has been doing amazing shit for years. There's even his advertisements. You got to listen to some of those because some great things are being developed. Some great things are being worked on. You're going to hear us talk about like the Ghost Phone and some other stuff. I mean, just some really, really cool projects being done, frankly, by really cool people. Not only that, but Shane even told me about some things that I wasn't even aware of, that I thought were really intriguing and that I am deep diving on, really as we speak. For example, silent.link. That's something you're going to want to check out. Now I'm going to put into the show notes for this episode. I'm going to add in where you can, the original page, to, vonupodcast.com. For a couple reasons. One is Shane does fantastic show notes, which is a rarity in my opinion. Like a lot of people aren't really good with their show notes. I put a good amount of thought into mine. Shane does tremendous with his. And not only that, but at his website, you can actually watch video. He and I did video. So if you want to see this hour and change conversation, with the Golden Stallion live and in color, as well as Shane, you can go there and you can check it out right through that. Anyway, he's just doing really great work. Again, an honor to be on his show. Something I want to clarify quick. So towards the end, we get into discussing, he asked me about, kind of my more BTC only, my Bitcoin only positions, which, he recognized it's not 100% Bitcoin only. But that like I had said, it's pretty close to that. Now that came out of an episode of the Agora podcast that I was on. I want to say it was in December. It was one of the early episodes that I was on because now I've been on there like 5-6 times. But it was one of the early episodes that I was on where we were talking about a more distributed private delivery service. And I went on and, I was banting about some, higher tech solutions, shall we say, and how to make this whole thing work. And to be clear, because the way that we talk, that Shane and I talk about it, I just want to make sure there's clarity on what was being recommended where. And, Shane was like, correct me if I'm wrong and everything like that. And I at the time we were just riffing and rolling stuff out. So anyway, I just want to be clear that, so in that conversation, like how it got around to, why Shane was asking about my Bitcoin, almost Bitcoin only position, which it sounds much like he shares. So I had suggested for this distributed private delivery service, kind of underground delivery service, I had suggested using Zcash. And then it ended up in I believe it was the Agora Podcast Telegram group, where someone said, why not use Ethereum? And I had basically said, no, I don't recommend using Ethereum, in that episode. And that's sort of what got this whole conversation rolling about, BTC only. But I just want to be clear, like that using Ethereum wasn't the Agora podcast, wasn't Sec and Penguin's idea. In fact, bringing in crypto was totally my idea. And my position was, using something like Zcash or, maybe even something like Horizon. I was just hot on something. This is why I'm not exactly Bitcoin only. Okay. Because I like blockchains that take advantage of ZK snarks. I like, blockchains that are like baking in encryption from the beginning, much like, ZK snarks is brilliant cryptography, no matter how you feel about Zcash or Horizon or, any of those. But regardless of how you feel about that, it's just, this is just brilliant math, and I remember I had a guest on years ago talking about that. And, the guy had basically said, like, Zuko, who helped or was, kind of the lead behind ZK Snarks, like the guy deserves like a Nobel Prize. And I completely agree, for that development. So we didn't really get into, and I want to, just for this exclusive intro that you'll be getting with having this episode of the Vonu Podcast, my appearance on the Vonu Podcast in the Sovryn Tech Feed. Some people have asked me, okay, so what cryptocurrencies do you like if you're not BTC only? And I was tempted to save this for the Wednesday Q&As on Patreon, but I've got so many exciting things coming up for the Wednesday, or, for the Q&As happening on Patreon. And they're happening, like guests that will surprise the fuck out of you. It's really going to be something special. And as well as some collaborative work going on with some of the live Q&As. We'll get into that. That's for Patreon. So, and of course, if you want to sign up for that, patreon.com/sovereigntech, links in the show notes. But I figure I'll get to it here. Now, one of my biggest rules, really for any software, not just cryptocurrency, but for any software, is simplicity. Frankly, if I can have simplicity in the code as well as in, a lack of complexity in what it does, I'm a fan. Okay. I'm there. So as far as cryptocurrencies go, I really want to see that simplicity. I don't want that Ethereum that can essentially be like this blockchain computer, all over the place that can kind of do everything. I'm not interested in that. Like that level of software. Yep, I have a general OS that I have to spend enough time worrying about locking down and everything else. But beyond that, there should be as little complexity as possible. And things should be very purpose built. So Bitcoin, of course, Bitcoin with the Lightning Network, Bitcoin can kind of do anything also, but the core of Bitcoin, no pun intended, the core of Bitcoin is digital gold, right? The core of it is very simple. And we've already had, I've been criticizing for years. We've even had recent critiques on Sovryn Tech in 2022 around the concern, not necessarily with Bitcoin, but with other blockchains, where when you start bringing in like cross-chain, side chains, a lot of this other stuff, these bridges, like how do you secure those? And I've been saying, look, adding the complexity with bridges and everything else and that functionality is just it's going to hurt the network overall, certainly security wise, and who knows how else. And we're already seeing the effects of that when, there's so many projects that are cross chain, and it's not growing pains. It's nature of the beast is what it is. And so just don't feed the fucking beast. But anyway, I'm getting all over the place here. So Bitcoin I love for, it just being just that digital gold. And of course, for reasons that when you listen to Shane and I talk towards the end of this episode, you'll hear all about that. So I don't know that I need to explain that so much. Beyond Bitcoin though, I do appreciate Litecoin, particularly and this isn't new for me. I've been saying this for almost a decade now. What I've always loved about Litecoin, I feel like Litecoin is a real world test net for Bitcoin. That's Litecoin's value. You can test shit out. There's an actual economy that may not be the backbone so much as Bitcoin is, but it's a test bed for a lot of different ideas, that you can start baking in. And I mean, I love Litecoin for that. Also, if somehow something could have happened to Bitcoin, Litecoin could be just that slightly different, it's like biodiversity. Litecoin could be that slightly different strain that doesn't end up with the same effect, perhaps negative effect or whatever. I mean, I'm speaking in very broad terms, but I hope you get my point, is that I consider Litecoin to be the real experiment. Okay, as to where Bitcoin, I want to be incredibly conservative in what it implements. It needs to be slow and take time. As to where Litecoin, I feel like you can do different things. And it can have its own value in that. It can have its own economy in that, in being that experimental, blockchain. So that's what I love about Litecoin. I don't, if Litecoin is just going to go lockstep and parity with Bitcoin, it's not that interesting, because then the argument is totally valid. Why not just stick with Bitcoin? Sure, why not? But Litecoin being this more experimental blockchain, I'm a big fan of that and big proponent of it. So love what Litecoin is doing. And again, I'm not just saying that it's like second fiddle experiment. I'm saying it can have a different order of operations that brings its own value. It's legitimate value. It's not just an experiment. Beyond Litecoin, Dogecoin is what it is. Like, I don't really care, but but at the same time, Dogecoin is just this like mockery of value that I appreciate it for what it is. And I also like that you can actually like mine Dogecoin. I mean, part of the reason that I hate most cryptocurrencies is they're all just, most of them are just ERC20 tokens, and so who gives a shit, right? Like, it's not really independent software, and that's fucking annoying. And you see what happens, like with Solana and others, when it is independent software and it's trying to bring in a massive user base, and it just ends up getting fucked up because it didn't earn the user base that, say, Dogecoin, Litecoin, or Bitcoin, earned. Or even another project that I like cryptocurrency is Monero. I dig it. I mean, it's a privacy token for one, so that gives it points. But it has a really powerful community behind it, and an interesting one at that. I really dig. I do dig Monero and what that does. It's one of those things where, okay, yep, we're getting that cryptography, we're getting that privacy baked in from the beginning, and Monero, I mean, has had a rocky road over the years, and we've talked about it. And I haven't, there's points where I've been concerned, about it, but at the same time, I'm ultimately glad it's out there. Same with, Zcash and some of Zcash's progeny, as it were, that also take, that also make use of, ZK snarks and have that privacy baked in. So if you're not getting it, like, the point that I'm making here is, outside of Bitcoin, Litecoin, Dogecoin, all I really care about are, and Dogecoin again is just kind of just an oddity. All I really care about are privacy coins, because once you get outside of like Bitcoin and Litecoin, that's ultimately, what really matters to me, from a cryptography standpoint, and, from more of a point of even of ethics, in the ethics of privacy itself. I know a lot of people are really hot on certain tokens because they're like supportive or part of the backbone for Web3. I've already talked countless times in 2022 alone, and you don't have to be a patron to even hear it. Like, I was very open about it, and some of it that was Patreon content I actually released to the public because I considered it important. I am no supporter of Web3 at all. Maybe in the abstract concept I have some support for it, but that's not even the abstract of Web3 is not the future of computers or technology or networks that I envision or even want. I mean, now what I envision as in how things are going to go outside of my control, even that's wildly different than Web3. Okay. And that's a whole other conversation to get into. But where I would even want, in my perfect world scenario, the direction I would want technology to go would also not be Web3, even in the abstract, really, it wouldn't be that. So, no excitement there with any of those tokens that are somehow, supporting that. Anything that's pushing like NFTs, you hear us call bullshit on that when you listen to Shane and I in this episode. Metaverse, fuck it. Like, I mean, none of this stuff really excites me because none of it is genuinely improving the human condition. None of it is involving the human condition. None of it is really taking away power from, centralization, or, not really, right? Or at the very least, it's not taking power away from government. Bitcoin took power away from government. I like that. Okay. ZK Snarks takes power away from the surveillance society. I like that. Okay. If you're not interested in, disempowering the surveillance society and government, I don't give a shit about your project. It doesn't mean a damn thing to me. So that's where I stand on cryptocurrencies overall. And, I think you got my short list of what intrigues me. And there might be ones out there that are doing interesting things, that are doing it, like more in the direction of like Monero, or like what Litecoin is doing, that I might find interesting, that I might not be aware of. I'm open to that. But again, if you're an ERC20 token, like, just go shit yourself, get out of my face. And really, even Litecoin's implementing, like privacy features into its base. Great. But if you're not a privacy coin, or trying to implement that in some way, like in a real way, like at the very base level of your code, I'm not interested. So anyway, let's get to the episode with Shane and I. Again, it was just so much fun to talk with him. I mean, this is a guy who's really, who practices what he preaches, and I always respect people like that. And the Vonu Podcast, it's been going over 200 episodes, which that is phenomenal. We'll talk about that at the onset of the importance of podcasts being out there, podcasts with this kind of mindset, the very, very personal freedom mindset. I love it. So check it out. This was recorded, oh boy, I want to say it was like a week ago, not even, maybe about a week and a half ago. And so it's very fresh what you're getting here. And if you want to see it in video, again, link is in the show notes for the episode, the original airing of the episode, which is a few days ago on the Vonu Podcast. Go ahead and click that link and watch it there, or listen to it here. And I'll let it ride right out. So I will see all of you on the other side.
And welcome to the Vonu Podcast, the podcast making you invulnerable to the coercion of the state and the servile society. I'm your host, Shane, coming to you from the Free Republic of Paznia, the Self-Liberator's Paradise. That website is Paznia, Paznia.com. If you'd like to learn all about this Second Realm network that we're building. On that note, the first event of year 2 here at Paznia has been announced. With the coming of warm weather, March 31st to April 4th, again, March 31st to April 4th, marks our now annual spring camping event at our Church of Self-Liberation, the Nature Sanctuary here at the Free Republic. All vetted Paznians and Self-Liberators are encouraged to attend. The only items on the docket thus far are lamb and bird processing, and probably cleaning out a shed here on the property as we transition the ruminants over to the other larger field. And as always on the docket, a reinvigorating weekend getaway of liberation here at the Free Republic of Paznia. Again, the website is Paznia.com if you need help getting vetted or wish to learn more. Again, anyway, today I'm joined by Brian Sovryn, host of the Sovryn Tech Podcast, author of the book on Dark Android, and one of the panel members in the 200th episode special Roundtable podcast. That was TVP number 127, if you'd like to scroll back through your podcatcher after today's discussion, of course. He was also a guest very early on in our Crypto-Anarchism series, episode number 47, dating back to June of 2018, which in many respects feels like an entirely different fucking life. But to give you an idea of our discussion then, that show was titled Mesh Networking Applications for Self-Liberators. So today I figure we'll start with an update on Sovryn Tech and the state of the overall tech world. Talk a bit more about his upcoming Van Nomad adventure, since that's definitely very pertinent to this podcast and even the Free Republic of Paznia too. We'll get a 2022 Dark Android update, especially now with my experience with the Ghost phone, because last time we talked about it, I had never had anything but a spy phone. So I actually have a month or so under my belt of the Ghost phone, so that'll be a lot of fun to talk to them about that. And we'll probably spend the rest of the time talking about new projects, ideas, and more generally, as per the title of this episode, ways to further fortify the digital second realm, which of course translates into physical space-time too. But without further ado, Brian, welcome back to the Vonu Podcast, man. How are things going?
Good. Honored to be back. And, I don't know if I got the chance to say it last time I was on, but 200 episodes and you're just rocking. I mean, bravo. So, again, great to be back. With Sovryn Tech. We're celebrating around 400 episodes, not that like we're in any kind of competition. I just love it knowing that there are podcasts that are playing the long game, because this kind of media is so important. I will admit, like there was probably a couple years ago. This was before the thing known as COOF or COVID, depending how you want to say it. That like there was a part of me that was thinking, it's like, well, we're at where we're at with tech, and I don't know, and I know this is kind of a general gist of what we're going to talk about, but I was feeling very disillusioned with the direction that tech was going, because kind of like you were talking about with the Ghost phone, which Biconic's doing great work on that stuff. I mean, I absolutely love what he has going on. But like things you just, and I know we talked about this during your 200th episode as well. Like you just can't pull anything off the shelf anymore and really have any kind of expectation, not only of privacy, but also of security. And so things at the time, I want to say, in 2019, I was kind of feeling like, well, has this run its course? Like, is the message just like lost? The tech war is lost. It's over. And so I was kind of thinking of Sovryn Tech kind of dropping off of the map, but really then, COVID did occur, and it came pretty apparent that, oh no, we've, podcasts, liberty-oriented podcasts need to keep going and need to be out there, to help get either some truth or some actionable, solutions, items out there for people, during that time. Not that I feel any better about the direction that tech is going. And really, I feel like we've essentially, at least in America, we've essentially lost control of like even our options on tech, the direction that things are going. Like the market cannot speak right now. I mean, they're, it's essentially, it's Samsung, it's Google, it's Apple, it's whoever, offering crap sandwich A and crap sandwich B. Those are your choices. So, it's definitely a time for a lot of independent work to be done. And like you're talking about the Ghost phone, certainly that's part of that. And I'm sure we'll get into some other things. But so Sovryn Tech has definitely taken a turn towards, okay, here's, the best of what to use now. There's not a whole lot, in my opinion, there's not a whole lot of point in, I mean, something I used to do a lot would be covering, okay, what are the tech giants doing today, and you can still get into that. It's still important to get that information out there. But really, what they're doing, you have no say in which direction they want things to go. And in a lot of cases, you don't even really have, like, again, like I was saying earlier, you don't have a choice on what technology you want to even take advantage of. For example, and I'm sure we'll talk about this a little bit more later too. Like the smartphone I have right now is a spy phone, as you so aptly called them. It's a Google Pixel 6. Now, when I first got this is a totally new phone. When I first got this in November of 2021, I could set it to where it would just use 4G. As of its most recent update, now you essentially are forced with the stock software to use 5G. They don't even give you the option anymore, even though all the radios are there and everything's there for you to take advantage of 4G. And for months I had it set for that. And for good reasons. I mean, don't even have to get into health concerns around 5G. It's just a matter of saving battery and all these other things. But that's the thing, or that kind of just elucidates the point, is that you are losing so much control. Now, I mean, I can reinstall, a different ROM, or operating system onto that phone, and that's likely going to happen. But just to prove the point that off the shelf, you just don't have control, the technology that you're using. And so a lot of Sovryn Tech's take in the past year and a half has been around concentrating on technologies where you absolutely do have control and stepping far more out of the consumer space, which is what I think made the show popular for many years. But again, that consumer space is just essentially lost. And just, the best suggestion is to just walk away from that, But yeah, so I guess that's a somewhat short version of where Sovryn Tech is at right now.
Sure, and I appreciate that, and that's kind of the what I've noticed, especially over the past couple of years. With I guess I've doubled down on research into like health and a lot of other subjects too. But you can't really use speaking in that same sort of speaking towards that same thing. You can't really do a lot of research on the internet anymore, like with search engines. It's just gotten a lot harder. So you're talking about the importance of Liberty podcasts and podcasts in general. I mean, that's a really hard avenue to censor, right? Like RSS feeds. So like I think it's critically important. The podcasting in general. I had Daryl Becker on back in I guess it would have been like mid 2020 when I guess Google was entering into the pharmaceutical space, and they were obviously doing their they were obviously any narratives outside of what they want to promote monetarily for financial reasons or otherwise are off the platform. So I kind of had the realization with him, or I was kind of talking through it at that point, like if regardless of what the truth is, regardless of what the truth is, like the only thing that's going to be available to like most of the mainstream, the mainstream folks is going to be like one thing. So yeah, like I think keeping whether it's the truth or the liberty stuff out there is great. And then as you're talking about with the tech, yeah, it's kind of funny. Like the de-Googled Google Pixel is like what you have to work with now. So like there's definitely not a whole lot of options in the tech. I mean, everything is going towards kind of that homogenization where everyone has the same thing. So I definitely share that sentiment. And despite your kind of negative outlook, and I understand, I'm right there with you. I started 2020. I kind of took a little tech sabbatical, and I was going maybe back into the primitive areas too. Like I kind of had a visceral reaction.
Sure.
But I'm back into it now, obviously. But I took a step back because it just kind of seemed like the digital realm, the tech world was kind of lost. But on a more optimistic stance, I'm very pleased, after taking a step back for a while. I tried out, like Jitsi, we're on Jitsi right now. I tried out their app back in 2015, and it required like a bunch of manual steps to get things going. And a lot of the stuff that I was trying out then was super, like it was task. Like it was something I had to like want to do to like practice or, to experiment. But thankfully, now like it seems like the open source space has progressed a lot. So much to the point that we're talking about the ghost phones. I have, like little experience with, actually zero experience with Android, and zero and very little experience with Linux outside of, I guess, Linux Tails bootable flash drive, and also the ghost pad that's one of Jamin's ghost pads that I have. But like you pick up the ghost phone with Calyx OS on it, and it just fucking works. Like it's crazy. No issues so far. The freedom beyond like the Apple App Store is amazing. The fact that it tells you, like, before you download anything, it tells you, like, any privacy concerns that are with the app, like, all that, it's incredible. It's definitely incredible, and to have all of my network traffic routed through VPN and Tor is just incredible, and it doesn't take any setup. It's always on. Just you set it up that way, and it's always on. So yes,
I mean, certainly, and go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead, man.
So yeah, certainly something that occurred. Since actually the last time I was on Vonu Podcast. I mean, in fact, interestingly, it was Sovryn Tech's episode 200. So this is a few years ago, where I essentially declared, like, look, open source has won. Like, it's over. Closed source is effectively dead. Like, yeah, there's people who are still going to, develop within that kind of, mentality, but open source has really won the day. And it still has. And that's like the one really hopeful aspect with tech. The thing is, it hasn't won because people necessarily have like this ethos of, yes, I want everything to be open source so I can check my own code. It more won because the legacy system, like, needs it. It has to operate at that scale. It has to operate where so many people can contribute to it. Like, I mean, it's just a necessity, which is still ultimately a good thing. But the issue, so open source has won, but the issue is, and things are getting better, kind of like Ghost Phone, like you're talking about, is there's a bit of a learning curve, to using certain open source software. Some things it's, easy as pie to take advantage of. But that learning curve, is still kind of there. But even that, I think we're closing in on a bit. And really it just comes down more to, people just got to learn to get off of Facebook, or get off of, whatever, I don't know, whatever network, that they're thinking of, but that's a whole other thing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm with you. And I guess yeah, and I guess there's kind of the necessity aspect too. Like it does kind of require the ease, the user friendliness is a great first step. And then I don't know, for me it was kind of I've been taking steps out of the first realm, the Servile Society for a number of years, and 5 years ago it would have been pointless for me to try to I really didn't have that much privacy back then, and I knew if I was using a spy phone, I knew I knew there was no privacy there. But I was going to just go without a spy phone, and then Jamin came out with these, or just go without a smartphone in general for some time. But he came out with these ghost phones, and I got one that was, it's my ghost phone. There's no Google services on there, no nothing, obviously. Right. And I had this new idea. Like I have a phone number associated with Telegram and also Signal and other ones, which unfortunately that's gonna be with me now. And I was just gonna keep like a shitty old iPhone, like just the number in use just for that sake. And I was, I had the thought, like if I have to have one of these effing things with me, like it might as well be the most secure thing that I possibly could have, right? So I got a second one.
Absolutely.
So I've got my black phone and my white phone. And the white phone one, like, I still like to get on Twitter. Like, I'm sorry, like if I'm out and about, I like to get on Twitter. It's the only like, I guess, centralized social media I'm on now. But like I'm obviously not going to install that on my ghost phone. But regardless.
Yeah.
It takes the user friendliness was a great step, and then really it's just got to I think. Yeah, for me it was more so just trying to bring all of my actions in line with my principles, and obviously being on coercive platforms is not in line with my principles. So it kind of took that little push too. But I sell these ghost phones for Jamin on the LUA site, and there's a demand for them now. There's definitely an increased demand in these things now. So I think it's no better time.
Yeah, you know what else is, and I'm glad you brought this up. So something, or where there is a sea change, where there is a mentality change, and a good one, because it was something that I've been purporting for ever. And that, like Telegram, you mentioned. I mean, people can, bring up their arguments around its encryption scheme and all that, and whatever, that's at this point it's inconsequential, or at least for the argument, it's inconsequential. The thing I love about it is last year, Telegram finally came out and said, hey, if you get our app from either the iOS App Store or the Google Play Store, like they're censoring what you can see. And so we'll make a version available that you can download on Android, for free, because it's always been for free. But you can download it. You can download it independently. It won't run into that censorship issue. And we're actually going to give you like advanced features if you use the independent APK, if you use the independent installer.
Oh, wow.
And I just thought, wow. I mean, like getting away from app stores, because there's where how many apps, especially social media apps for whatever group, whether you agree with them or not, are getting shut down like all the time. To get this idea of installing your own software again without an app store, that's a huge boon in at least reclaiming some control of the data you can receive. Perhaps not so much what you can send out, but at least what you can receive. I love that's happened in the past year. That's a great direction for things to go. And even like Twitter, you can easily access. You don't have to install the app. You can just load the mobile website on a browser, right? So, there's option. You don't. I mean, this is a point I've been bringing up a lot in the past year on Sovryn Tech. You should really consider every app not to be software, but to actually be an attack vector. Like the more apps you have, and especially the more accounts you have, the more attack vectors there are on you. And so if you don't have to install these things, or you don't have to have accounts or whatever, like by all means do not. If you do have to install them, Telegram's direction is the way to go. But if you can help it, maybe just run it through a web browser. So.
Right. Yeah. That's a good point. And I will attest to, I had to install, I was going to install the Float social media platform, install their app, but they've gotten removed because they've gotten removed from app stores because they refuse to censor. So like I actually had to find their APK file and install it, and it was just it's super easy because I've tried on the ghost pad that I have. Like I've tried to install things, but like I can't figure it out. Like it's still like for me, and I'm not retarded when it comes to this shit. But like for me, it was still to the point where like I can't figure this out. Whatever. But the ghost phone it went really well. So yes, again, attesting to the user friendliness of this stuff. Which I mean, thankfully, it would be bad if within 5 years it hadn't gotten easier. So I guess this should just be the normal trajectory. But I am happy to see it nonetheless. But
yeah. I mean, and there's no reason this stuff can't be easy. I know there was a concern. I did a whole episode on it, but I know there was a concern around, like F-Droid was starting to ban apps as well, which F-Droid is an app repository for Android that a lot of these projects like Calyx OS or others, or at least can take advantage of, whether or not they do directly. But, I just want to make it like clear here on this episode, F-Droid is still a totally valid thing to use. I don't like that they're getting political either, but F-Droid allows you to pull from your own repositories that you can set up yourself, or, that somebody could set up, like Jamin could set one up, or, whatever, or I could. And so there's no reason not to use a great open source app like that. Even if you don't like its repositories, you can just end up, using another. So again, I mean, what we're saying here, solutions exist, and they're available, and things are getting easier.
Yes, definitely. So I don't want to. I want to get back to the dark Android stuff and have a more thorough discussion on that.
Yeah, sure.
But more of kind of an introductory topic here, and still related to the tech, in some way. But yeah, I do apologize if it seems like a radical shift for the audience here. But anyway, you mentioned on episode 200 that you were kind of setting out or planning on a van nomad adventure. So I was wondering if you could
sure.
Maybe expand upon that a little bit here, and also I guess more in particular to Sovryn Tech. I know, like I've watched hundreds upon hundreds of van nomad conversion videos. From the lowest tech all the way up to like the highest tech that I've seen. So I'm curious on your tech loadout too, and if you have any interesting ideas in mind there.
Yeah, sure. I don't know how much custom I'm doing. I mean, as far as like equipment that I actually carry with me, that might be a little more, of a custom affair. But I mean, the van that Ellen and I will be using, we plan on going for at least a year, going around the colonies here and try to hit as many of them as we can. And certainly, get to connect with, other liberty-minded people who are all over the place. And I know you certainly understand this, as you do a podcast for so long, you kind of build up a little community, and it can be really, enriching, frankly, to finally like meet a lot of these people and have two-way communication instead of just the one-way communication of a podcast. And so it'll be fun to go around and connect with people. I'm pretty sure there's a trip to Pasnia involved. So, that'll be happening. Yeah, absolutely. But I as far as the van itself, it will be keeping it pretty simplistic as far as like, so there's a company called Goal Zero. They offer a lot of really great kit that's popular with conversion tricks for vans, and particularly like as far as power, I think that's the first thing anybody really asks about. But it's the Yeti 1500X. That's the power station that I'm going to end up using, and that can actually be directly charged right off of the second battery in the van, or right off the alternator, I should say. And so that's what we'll be doing as far as power goes. I do also plan, like a lot of conversions they want to do where they'll add on solar panels to a van. I have two concerns around doing that. Usually doing those solar panels right to where you can really take advantage of them and where they essentially become worth the cost. You're going to make some changes to essentially I guess what we'll call the structural integrity of the van. And I don't really want to do that. Also, I mean, when this trip is over, it's a van I plan on continuing to use. And often enough, I'm in, areas that experience some pretty harsh winters. So I don't really want to, be so reliant upon solar where it may not be always so practical. And I really don't want to make that many changes to the van. So the Yeti 1500X, that can, you can get like these briefcase solar panels that you can set out aside, and you can actually use that to charge, in this case, the Yeti battery. And it's particularly, I think it's called the Boulder 200 is the one that I'm getting. It folds up to like the size of a briefcase. It's pretty amazing. Mm-hmm. But so there's the advantage of that. So I don't have to do any structural changes to the van, at least exterior. Mm-hmm. And then also, parking, like constantly parking the van where it can get the sunlight. I mean, you're going to cook inside of that van. Yeah. So it could be advantageous, perhaps like while you're driving, some would say, but then, even with solar panels, or even when you have a solar setup like that, usually you're going to charge your batteries, in your van via your alternator anyway. So it's kind of redundant. So I think having like just an external kit, like the Boulder 200 that I could set, however far away while I can still park under a tree, is something that I think makes the most sense. And also, I mean, the price difference is, you're talking hundreds of dollars compared to thousands of dollars, as far as like what it costs to actually do a solar conversion structurally on the van, as to just having a briefcase that could charge your battery anyway. So that's my solution as far as power source.
Yeah, and that's that. And if I could jump in real quick, that's I think when I was looking, I guess 4 years ago, into mm-hmm. my van nomad adventure, obviously watching again these hundreds upon hundreds of videos. I think I was looking into that exact same one, or something similar, a similar model back then, because mm-hmm. I wasn't, super technical back then, where I wanted to install. Like I was going to install the solar panels, but I didn't want to have to do all the wiring and the charge controller and all that shit. I just want to be able to plug it directly into this effing thing and have it work.
Yep.
Because if you run it yourself, if you do it yourself and you have like a short or something, you got to figure out where the F that short is in your system. And if you didn't do it, the best way, it might be a major pain in the ass if you're out on the road. So I think I was already looking into a system like that whenever I was considering the Nomad thing. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, and that's another part for me is I like to be able to replace parts, and like do so quickly. Like if whatever blows, be it the solar panels or not that they blow, but you know what I mean? I just like to be able to pull something out, toss it or not. Yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah, and then put in a new one. I don't necessarily want to toss. If I can repair it, great. But I don't want it. Again, I really don't like things to be so tied to, to the structure of the van itself.
Sure. Yeah, that's definitely fair, and I guess I hadn't thought about, but yeah, you are right. Like a lot of these folks are down in the south, during obviously stay mm-hmm. with the warm weather because it's, Anyway, there's less van nomads in Canada. I'll just put it that way. But like you imagine if they're charging their batteries and they have solar panels, then they're in the desert, then they're sitting in the hot ass desert or they're driving. So yes, that is a good point. Mm-hmm. I feel like that could be uncomfortable if you had to. Entirely, park out in the sun. It's fair.
Yeah, and we have a cat with us that that's gonna be riding along, and you don't need him baking or anything. So
right.
But so beyond, as far as that goes, as far as kit that I'm bringing along,
right? Yep.
There's. Everybody brings a laptop, right? Everybody needs a laptop, I guess. Mm-hmm. Well, I guess I'll start off with as far as like, how do I get internet? So I explained how I'll have power. As far as internet goes, I don't like this, and it's something that I really want to work on more of a solution for. But I will be using that same Pixel 6. I use Google Fi. Now, obviously screw Google, like that should go without saying. At the same time, like I still have, 9 to 5 work that I do, and then it's remote. And so I can do it while van lifing. So there's aspect of the first realm, digital realm that I still have to, connect with in varying ways. So it's something that at least for now, makes a degree of sense. If I'm ever in a scenario where I don't want that kind of tracking on me, I certainly know how to temporarily remove that situation, mm-hmm. If need be. But so Google Fi, despite it being Google, does a million things right as far as connectivity, kind of like you were talking about with the Ghost phone, how you're connected through Tor and a VPN and all that. Like Google Fi by nature goes through VPN. Yes, it's Google's VPN. That sucks. Certainly I could do, alternate things. But the main thing with Google Fi that's really advantageous is it doesn't, as far as a phone plan goes, is that it doesn't care how much data or like what you're using the data for. Like if you're using it to tether, like your laptop to it or something like that, it just charges you based on the amount of data. It also doesn't matter where you are. So, because there's also times where I kind of have to travel the world a bit, whether or not I'll have to do that while van lifing, because I could get into interesting scenarios. I don't know how exactly that would work. But it essentially works anywhere. It's not like with AT&T or any of these guys where you have to call them up and say, hey, I'm going into Canada. Could you give me this decreased rate? Everything's just essentially a flat rate. And for $120, a month, you get unlimited data and all this stuff, and unlimited data everywhere, and they don't care if you're tethering or not. Again, I could work out to where all this stuff, I could do all of this anyway. It would end up probably costing around the same to do it, but that is what I am using for internet. But at the same time, I also don't like to really hold my smartphone and use my smartphone much. So the main thing that my smartphone would do would just be tethering to, other devices, and particularly a laptop. I mean, for, as far as smartphones go, there are smartphones now that have phenomenal battery life. Like the Pixel 6 that I mentioned, has essentially a 2-day battery. Granted, if it was tethering that whole time or being a hotspot that whole time, it would go a lot quicker. But that has a really good battery life. Another phone is like a Moto G Power that it has a battery life that can go like 4 days. So battery life in any of my devices is a really key factor. Even though I have, a great charging solution, I still want to use that as little, as possible. So battery life on anything that I'm bringing along with me is really, really key.
Yeah.
Now, go ahead, please.
Oh, I was just going to bring up one thing in terms of the internet. This is a fantastic solution that I just recently came across, and I've done it on my dark phone, my black Ghost phone.
Mm-hmm.
I tested this out, and if I think it's your US UK service right now, but silent.link, you can get you can pay for data with Bitcoin anonymously, or you can get like an actual US or UK identity for like $60 in effing Bitcoin. And you can't like send or like make calls, but like for 2-factor authentication stuff, you have incoming text and voice. And then you also have mobile data too. So like it's such an incredible solution, and $60. You scan, and it's just an eSIM card. So it's absolutely nuts that exists now. And it's funny. So I recently had to switch over to a different carrier, and it takes them hours to get new accounts set up, and it took like 30 seconds.
Yeah,
I sent the Bitcoin, scanned a QR code for the eSIM card, and it's just like done. It's like, Jesus Christ, I've got a phone number now. And it was not, paid in Bitcoin. So like it's nuts some of the solutions that are out there. So I'll mention that as well, because I can use that one for a hotspot. And the other cool thing about that too is with this service, this silent.link, you can actually see what networks are available, and you can choose which one to connect to. So like Verizon or AT&T, or if there's even other towers nearby. So again, as you were saying earlier, and as I say a lot on the spot, there are always solutions.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's really great. That's something I got to look into more, because one of the things I'd really love to see developed, and it was something I actually years ago I thought this was the direction a lot of technology was going to go, but then I realized, wait, that's just too consumer friendly and makes sense. So no, that's not what they're going to do. But I was expecting at one point that, companies like, take your pick, Samsung, Apple, whoever, that eventually they would just come out with like a little like pebble-sized device that is really just internet. Like it's just a router, or it's just a hotspot that you carry with you, and then you have all your separate devices, and they all essentially connect to that one hotspot that it's really tiny that you always have with you. I think that's a project that still has a lot of validity to do, and I think you could get some of the you could convert some of these Android smartphones, especially ones that have the gigantic batteries in them, and create like these more of these stealthy hotspots that you could take advantage of. Because here's the thing. So like with smartphones, you have to go through quite a bit, or you have to buy from Jamin, but you have to go through quite a bit to get that in any way remotely secure. And even then, privacy is kind of up in the air. That depends on how hard you work at that, because that's more of a mindset than it is necessarily a technology that you have installed. But with a laptop or with a computer, a traditional computer, the options are just blown open on that, on how well you can secure and keep private, what you're doing with a device like that, as compared to a smartphone. So, like that's, I guess, kind of coming full circle, that's an area where that I'll kind of be relying upon, where, okay, sure, everything's being funneled through, my Google Fi connection, but then at the same time, I'm protecting so much of that data, more through the use, of my laptop, which I have, just infinitely more control over, as far as what gets sprayed and prayed out there with it, as far as data goes. But anyway, yeah. So battery life is really, really key. I've gone to, something we were kind of alluding to earlier. We're really at the point where everything that the new hotness is really the old hotness, meaning that like going back to older technologies, and I mean, even as simple as buying like 6, 7, even 10-year-old laptops as compared to the latest whatever nonsense, is really the way to go today. And for a multitude of reasons. One is, good luck even getting a lot of new computers because of supply chain, chip shortages and all of that.
Yeah, no shit. Yeah.
But also, yeah. Like that's a very real issue. The other part that I like about kind of what I was speaking to earlier is that I like things that are repairable. Older computers generally, like the one I use that I'll be taking with me is particularly, it's a Dell Latitude 7280. The computer's about 5-6 years old. It's a couple screws, the whole bottom pops off, and you can replace everything inside of it. Look, when you're on the road, and you don't have like an easy mailing address at all times, that it's kind of a necessity to be able to do that. And another reason that I recommend these kinds of laptops like Dell's or like Lenovo ThinkPads, is there are shops all over the country, really all over the world, that specifically repair like enterprise class computers for either, and they're usually near colleges, or they'll be, like near whatever industrial park that exists outside of a city. And, you can get parts, you can get even if you don't know how to do it, you can pay them to fix it. And, they love doing it. I've worked with many of these companies in the past. So it's a great way to ensure that your digital equipment, like it's almost an insurance policy without having to, rely on Amazon shipping boxes at gas stations or whatever. Because again, these companies these repair services are everywhere. So that was a really key thing for me as well, is to make sure I'm using a laptop that is repairable either by me or very quickly repairable just about anywhere that I am.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. I guess I hadn't really thought about that angle on, I guess the self-sufficiency tech van nomad thing, but that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Getting to talking about, choosing items with, or choosing devices with super long battery lives and all that. Repairability. Yeah. I like that. Yeah. Yeah. That is an angle I had not really heard or even thought of before. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, sure. But yeah, my laptop's kind of my main thing. Sure, also people like to have fun. I have tablet, I have a tablet that I use for reading stuff. I'm sure there's a lot of great things at the Pasnea library I got to get, but
when it's available.
And
yes.
when it's available, that's right. And I have gaming systems and all that stuff, but everything, this is another part too, is, I'm really keen on, having, like, I'll have the little, 20,000 milliampere batteries, external batteries that you can charge smartphones with or other devices. I try to have everything have a unified connector. That way I'm not carrying a ton of wires. Because if you have, frankly, if you have more than 2 or 3 devices, you could end up with like 20 different I mean, really, even though the math doesn't seem to add up, you could end up with like 20 different connectors that you're going to need for these things. And so I am very particular in, as best as I can help it, having everything have a USB-C port on it. So that way I can essentially, use the same charger just about anywhere. And I mean, anything to just lighten that tech load, is a good thing. So that's another key part with just about everything I have is I try to be very selective with that. Even that older laptop I mentioned also has a USB-C port, even though I can't really use it for charging. But, just trying to keep things simplified in that way. Let's see. Another part, well, I do keep, I will be carrying a Baofeng radio with me, the classic UVR yeah. I love that thing. I think everybody, boy, if there's something everybody should be, because those, so even like those lower end Baofeng radios, handheld radios, they were selling for like $100 in 2020, in middle 2020, when really they shouldn't cost more than 30, but they were selling for like $100 if you could even find them. Because everybody, thought the world was going to end or whatever. Right. And, I get it. So, I think that's a great thing. Like now they're back in stock. There's plenty of them. They only cost you $30. Everybody should have one of those. Everybody should be learning how to use, two-way radios. Because that is literally the tech they can't shut down. I mean, a solar storm might, but that's not the government. And as much as they wish it would, or wish they were. Anyway, so yeah, I think that's a handy thing to have. I will be, bringing one of those around, or, a set of those around with me as well to use. Beyond that on tech loadout, I mean, that covers a lot of it. That keeps things pretty simple. I mean, again, because of like the tablet that I use, I don't really have to carry a ton of books with me. I mean, I read all the time. But it's easy enough. Ebooks are wonderful things. Not that I want paper books to go anywhere, but like ebooks are just phenomenal. The kind of library you can carry with you at any point. So I'm certainly not worried about entertainment in any stretch. Like I'm never going to be bored. I know that. So I think that fairly covers my tech loadout, unless you have any questions on that.
Sure. Yeah, that's great, man. I actually came across came across in one of the podcasts I was listening to crystal radios, and I found a website where you can get like $100 crystal radio kit. Like they used to, I guess prisoners have made them in prison to communicate with the outside. Like they're super, super easy to make. They don't require much. But I'm gonna dig in like that. That's another project at some point I'll do just for the hell of it. Like I don't know, it's a fun experiment, fun project.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and they certainly can't shut that down. I don't know how useful it is necessarily, but that's a different story.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's more useful when you're in a community, but
sure.
All the same. I mean, it's a standard that everybody can take advantage of. So to some degree, wherever you go, it can be useful. It's just there's got to be other people, Right. But yeah.
Yeah, interesting. So we've kind of been talking about it, off and on this whole time, this whole conversation so far. But I'd like to get kind of a more formal 2022 Dark Android update. I talked about my experience with the Ghost phone. I guess the
sure.
A couple of questions I have just since from my use, any VPN recommendations if you have any. I think 2-hop ones preferably if you got any on mind, and then other security and privacy tools that you think are that are newer that you think are definitely worthwhile for this year and forthcoming.
Yeah, sure. Well, Mulvad, which is MULLVAD, they are out of Switzerland. Mulvad is probably the best VPN out there right now. Private internet access was my recommendation for years. They just got bought out, or actually it was a couple of years ago, they got bought out by this massive conglomerate, like VPN conglomerate. They also, the same people also recently bought ExpressVPN. But the funny, like this company is so nasty. They literally, they didn't just buy up like a bunch of VPN services. They also bought up VPN review sites. And so
wow.
Like they're engaging where their review sites are recommending all of them because they own them,
So is this one of those companies that's financed by NQTel, or maybe it's Alphabet agencies or something? Kind of sounds like it.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. They do have a very ugly history. They've rebranded a couple times. I'm not even sure what their latest name is, but yeah. So you want to steer clear. I mean, the only two I really now that I recommend, there's Mulvad, which is my top one. I'll explain why. The other is AirVPN. They're really good. They've been around for a long time. They were one of the first ones to accept Bitcoin, and I mean, we're talking years ago. And they're based out of Europe, which some people might, what Mulvad is as well. Some people may prefer that because they feel that the regulatory environment for their data in Europe is better than it is in the United States. And while technically that's true, frankly, I think ever since the Cloud Act was put in, was put into law, I don't think there's any real advantage to using European services anymore. Not in that way, where if you're worried that your data is somehow naturally more protected, because the Cloud Act essentially says, no, we're the U.S., hand it over. And they kind of do vice versa. But Mulvad, I think, is a really great VPN, partly because, we mentioned earlier, like about, the more accounts you have, that's the more vulnerabilities you have. Mulvad, you don't have to have an account at all. You can pay in Bitcoin. You go to their website, they will generate a one-time page on the website that will give you an account number, and there's no password. There's none of that. You don't have to be responsible for anything except for that account number. And whatever, however you install Mulvad or connect to it, whether you're using like an open source client, or if you're using one of their official apps, all of which are very nice open source, all you have to do is put in that account number and it logs you in, and you're all set. Now, I like that for a lot of reasons, especially when you can pay for Bitcoin, because that creates a ton of deniability on your part, to where, like they can say, well, this person set it up and, they use this password or whatever. And with Mulvad's case, no, like, okay, it's an account, but anybody could have had access to that account number theoretically. Right. And you don't know how it was paid for. It was done with Bitcoin. So it was, pseudonymous at least. And so you're not beholden to what you do on that VPN, or at least that's, if you take the right steps, that's how I think it goes. Mulvad is my top pick. Also, they use WireGuard, as to where AirVPN is still using OpenVPN. WireGuard is a new VPN protocol. I'm a big fan of it. It's very fast. It's something baked right into the Linux kernel now. And Mulvad was really one of the first companies to implement that. Others have now, but I think they do great work. So that's my recommendation.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I looked into, and so just recently, and it sucks because I was finally in a position where I was gonna pay for it and actually like I'm stepping on my security. But Paul Rosenberg and Smuggler's Crypto Hippie went down, or they closed doors, their digital doors. I guess it was sometime this year or late last year. And theirs was, I interviewed Paul back in 2018. I'm gonna re-release those podcasts on the Vonu feed here over the coming weeks. But he mentioned back then, I didn't know a distinction, but like the 1-hop versus 2-hop VPNs. So theirs was one of the few that was actually 2-hop. And they had a very interesting, I guess, the interesting legal setup to shield users and such. So like it's unfortunate that one went down. I actually I'm testing out Proton VPN right now. Rise VPN comes stock with the Calyx OS, or at least they did on the Ghost phones. But I looked it up, and I'm not sure if maybe I misread or something. I thought Proton VPN was 2-hop, but it might not be 2-hop. But anyway, the Bitcoin, paid in Bitcoin, all that good stuff. But but do you know
Proton VPN's good? Go ahead.
I was going to ask specifically about 2-hop VPNs.
Proton VPN is pretty good. Part of the reason I actually like that and almost went with it was due to that. It is available, like the client itself is available in the F-Droid store, which I think is amazing. I'm surprised more VPN companies, don't do that. But that is, in my understanding, is they are 2-hop. So I think you're right about that.
Oh, well, that'd be good.
Yeah. So I do like Proton VPN as well. I think I keep forgetting about it because, I love Proton Mail, but that's what I always think of them as Proton Mail. And they have interesting things coming too. Like they're trying to do an entire Google alternative where they're creating like a Google Drive alternative that can be done via, through Proton Mail servers and everything. And I really like that. I know some people have concerns around Proton Mail now because there was an environmental activist in France who was caught or let's see, he was in Switzerland, but he was the French police were coming after him, and the French police petitioned the Swiss government to, like, can you give us the data, whatever data exists on this guy? And they did get the data from Proton Mail. The French government was able to acquire that data. So a lot of people were saying, oh, let's not touch Proton Mail and blah, blah, blah. But I don't agree with that sentiment. Just about any company you can imagine is going to hand over whatever data that they possibly have. The best thing is that they don't have a whole lot of data to hand over on you. Yeah. And go ahead.
Yeah, don't give them the data to hand over.
Yeah, right. Yeah, just don't have data. Yeah. But the thing is, just about any service, and this includes Signal, go down the list. Like, the one piece of data just about every service on the planet is going to have is, when was the last time you logged in? When was the last time you accessed their server? And there's not a whole ton, you can really do about that. I mean, there's some things you can route your traffic in certain ways, but still that's, it's attached to an account often enough. So that's, it's sadly kind of par for the course. But I don't think Proton Mail was in any way being malicious. I don't think they liked doing what they did, but anyway, that's another thing I did a whole episode on. It really needed one to cover it. So, but I just wanted to put that out there.
Sure. I'd heard something similar. I hear stuff like that a lot of times, but I don't know. Like, I don't have time to track down all of those, and generally I do keep a lookout for those sorts of things. But a lot of times, like, I'll hear a lot of times it's fear mongering. Like, it's like, oh, this isn't secure anymore. It's like they access via the guy's password on his phone. Like, it doesn't mean the encryption's insecure if they accessed it by accessing his phone. I think there's a recent case with Signal like that. Was it the Oath Keepers? Was Stuart Rhodes got raided, and that's what I heard. It's like, oh, Signal's not secure anymore. And I went and looked at it, and I was like, well, it looks like, just from the articles I read, they like accessed his phone. Like, there's nothing bad about Signal on that part. So you got to be careful. Like, I don't know. Like, those could be those could be psyops or whatever. In the sense that they're trying to get people to stop using secure software. I don't know.
Yeah, anytime I hear that sort of thing, the other argument that comes up all the time is, it's like, well, but they're funded by, like, part of the budget for the U.S. Navy, and which Signal and, like, Tor and some of these things they genuinely are. But the thing that people miss about that, and I mean, I was in the U.S. military myself. The thing that people don't understand about that is that a lot of time that funding, yes, it's coming from the U.S. Navy, but so legally, the U.S. Navy is, like, they have how to put this on their spreadsheets, like, they're, as compared to other alphabet soup organizations or divisions, of the government, like, for foreign applications, essentially for foreign policy, foreign actions, it's a lot easier for money to kind of go in that direction. So the point I'm getting at is, anytime you see U.S. Navy budget, especially in something related to cryptography or anything like that, it's probably CIA. Like, there's a very high chance of that. Now, but here's the thing. So a lot of people would say, "Ooh, that's bad. That's so bad," because the CIA is funding it, so there must be backdoors and all this other stuff. No. The CIA needs these tools too. Okay,
right, yes. They need them to
them.
Be secure, right? Yeah, they want to use them themselves.
Exactly, right. So it's almost as bad as it is, it's almost an argument for using them, because if the CIA does, like, okay, well, again, they're funding it. It's just like, this is the same argument I've had for Bitcoin forever. Like, Bitcoin is never going to go to zero. It's just never going to happen. Why? Because the CIA uses Bitcoin. They love it. Like, untraceable money, please give us more, like that's totally their attitude on it. And that's why, for many of, like, the first few years of Bitcoin, I think part of its valuation completely came from the fact that it was being, it was being used for charity and wonderful things. I'm not knocking Bitcoin at all. I never would. But at the same time, it was probably being used for buying weapons and who knows whatever else by nation states. So that's part of the reason that its value, even did what it did early on, I think. But yeah, so, saying that, oh, there's government money in it. Look, there's government money everywhere. You cannot avoid that. In every single project, the heat maps read everywhere. So yeah, just try and be, as informed as you can on these things. That's all.
Yeah. Lots of tentacles, for sure. Yeah,
Yes.
I've been trying.
Yeah.
I never really had that many, that many ties to the first realm to begin with. I started getting, I came across anarchism when I was, 20, I think I was 20. So, I hadn't connected that many ties, but it's still not easy, and there's still a lot of tentacles. But that was a good segue to we're coming up on about an hour, and I wanted to make sure. I think that's a great discussion so far on fortifying the digital second realm, and we can obviously have you back on to chat about that more. But I wanted to. I remember. I guess it would have been a number of months back, and it has been a little while. So if I missay anything of yours, please do correct me. But on the Agora, already talking about your somewhat BTC only views. I think it was in the context of the decentralized travel network that we're trying to put together. And one of them brought up using Ethereum or blockchain for it. And you kind of I don't remember exactly what you said on it, but it definitely seemed kind of somewhat BTC only. So I guess I'll turn it over to you there, kind of a general. What are your views on? I guess if you want to rehash your views on why not use Ethereum or blockchain for the decentralized travel network, or your views on the the crypto versus Bitcoin space generally.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm still incredibly to use a term, still incredibly bullish on particularly Bitcoin. There's other cryptocurrencies that I like. The thing is, I've been in the crypto space, and I've spoke at conferences. I've been knee deep in it since 2010. I've been knee deep in it forever, or almost as long as it's been around. And, in that amount of time, in 6 months, in what I call the tech world, in 6 months, a million things can change. There can be complete 180s. 1,000 companies could rise and fall in that time. But in 10 years, I have seen so much crap and so many promises, so many, oh yeah, we're working on this, we're working on that. And some of these things, sure. There's ideas out there, blockchain ideas, that, yeah, okay, I could believe it, that it would take 20 years to develop this thing, because it's doing something that's just never been done before. But at the same time, and I think you're the same way, we're practical people and we want our freedom now. And we don't necessarily want to wait. So when you get it done, great, we'll talk about it. But otherwise, I'm not going to have you on, to talk about, your project that you're working on that may or may not come out in 10 years. Right. So we've been dealing with a lot of that. Okay. I mean, it's so bad. I used to get emails where people I think, a quote unquote listener would email in and say, hey, you should have this guy on, to talk about his latest blockchain bullshit. And I'd be like, no, I know what this is. You're not even a listener. You're this company's marketing team, and you're probably one person, and you're just trying to get this asshat on, and anyway, the space is replete with that. And that's really, I think, the lesson that's been learned in 10 years in crypto is the space is just absolutely replete with scammers, with people who are just out to make, the quick buck, the quick pump and dump and all of this. The beauty of Bitcoin, two things. One, the beauty of Bitcoin was that the community, especially early on, was so incredibly passionate that's part of the reason why I think there was a lot of easier trust early on, 2012, 2013, and so on, with a lot of even other blockchain projects. Because if you're into blockchain, even if you're just into Bitcoin at that time, it was a pretty good bet you were, libertarian or, liberty oriented in some way. Mm-hmm. But no, just scammers came in, and then the legacy system came in, and they started getting in on all of this. And now the second part that's the beauty of Bitcoin is that it is figureheadless. There's no one to go Satoshi's after. Gone. Okay. Yep. Right. There's nobody. Exactly. There's nobody to go after. The only thing you can go after is the code, and the code's open source, so you can't do shit about it. And anybody can develop it and do whatever they need, blah, blah, blah. There's a team around it, but it's an amazing development process that Bitcoin goes through, more so than any other blockchain project out there. Everyone else has a figurehead. Everyone else has a cult of personality, be it Vitalik, be it, I don't know, go down the list. That you can essentially kind of go after, because that cult of personality, that person can also not just, maybe he's not even writing the code anymore for the project, but his opinion holds a lot of sway. There is I mean, there's people who are influencers, I guess you could say, in the Bitcoin space, but by and large, like the one guy, quote unquote guy, who, maybe could have had that kind of sway doesn't exist or isn't here, or, whatever the situation is. And so I love that about Bitcoin, that there's no God, in Bitcoin. And that's exactly how it should be. And I mean, it goes beyond that, but so Bitcoin, now you have things like Lightning Network, which I approve of these developments. I think they're great, which allows, Bitcoin to do a lot more than just essentially be digital gold. So I'm fine with that. And part of the reason I'm fine with that is that Bitcoin itself, because so many people are passionate about it, because there's such a network effect around it with so many people involved in it, it's essentially the most secure network on the planet. I mean, it blows away any other server farm out there. Like there's just nothing that comes close to the level of security involved with Bitcoin. So I feel a lot more confident about projects getting developed off of Bitcoin than I am about some upstart coming out of nowhere, which I can respect their passion, and maybe what they want to do. But if you have the choice of going with something new or something tried and true and the most secure network on the planet, what am I going to do? Of course, I'm going to go with the most secure network on the planet. And again, it's not something that can get shut down. It's open source. Anybody can run this stuff, as long as you have a big enough hard drive. Yeah, so there's that advantage with Bitcoin as well. But then, while I do approve Lightning Network, I like that it's all this stuff being done that's like off chain, so you're not affecting necessarily the direct code, of Bitcoin. A lot of these other projects, their concepts of, smart contracts, of NFTs, which those are utter nonsense.
Thank you.
Which, yeah, like whatever project you can imagine that they want to do, or like this term that's getting bantied about, which is also nonsense, that being Web3. All these different, what do you got? Sorry.
No, thank you. That's all. I'm just trying.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, sorry. Yeah. All of these, like people wanting to do like social media on blockchain and all this other stuff. So you've got to prove to me that these things were good ideas before there was a blockchain in the first place. One of, a saying that I've been saying for years is that if it was a bad idea off of blockchain, it doesn't become a good one just because it's on blockchain. And that's a really key metric to keep in mind with anything that somebody's trying to sell you, with Ethereum or, go down the list of it. So, they want to, so that my point is, like, you got to prove to me that what you're wanting to do with your new blockchain is even a good idea in the first place. And that is a very hard task, at least to me, because then the other part of it comes in, which is the lessons that we've had of what you could call the internet today, that being Web 2.0, if you want to, go with colloquialisms. It's not just that you have to prove to me that they were a good idea necessarily there, but it feels like a lot of these guys. So you have Web 2.0 and you have a lot of people that made a lot of money on that. And it feels like now we have a lot of people developing blockchains that, okay, so they essentially bled dry the internet as it is right now. And so they just need to do something else. They just need to make some kind of money. And so now their blockchain project is just taking the same crap, putting a new coat of paint on it, I guess. And, and they're saying that, this is going to be so much better. Why, but again, it's the same nonsense. And part of the problems with Web 2.0 and why even that argument of like, say what, when they want to say, oh, it's Web 3, it's decentralized, it's this, part of the problem with what existed on Web 2.0 and why their argument for, say, like Web 3 makes sense is because we know that it's broken on the internet as we understand it today. But the reason that it's broken on the internet today is because it's complex, and complexity is the enemy of security. Okay. Like you can, the more complex you make something, the harder it is to actually secure it. Mm-hmm. And I worry, like most blockchain projects outside of Bitcoin, as they just keep on adding on features, you're adding complexity to a space that never required it. You're adding complexity. And again, once you add that complexity, the security starts to go out the window. And so my argument that why use Bitcoin, because it's the most secure network on the planet, dies with almost every other blockchain. That doesn't mean there aren't blockchain projects that are doing interesting things. Like I like Litecoin. I think Monero is, okay, like privacy coins, I think are an interesting idea. Can we do all of these things on Bitcoin? Sure, of course we could. But so I'm not totally Bitcoin only, but what I am is anti-complexity when it comes to software, when it comes to the digital realm. And all of these blockchain projects are just, that's all they are, is complexity. It's insane.
Yeah, no, that's all. Yeah, all totally fair, man. And like I use Odyssey, which has it's used to be library, so it's got their library token. So like I'd lean towards the BTC only position, but like if there's something that is actually of value and actually of use, like I will use it. But the thing is, the library token is superfluous. It's irrelevant to what I use the platform for. I don't know anyone that trades library tokens, right? So like, it's not like,
right.
It's a different use. No, it's not Bitcoin. So like, and Monero, like I that was I guess even when I wasn't necessarily, more BTC only like I am now, it was only like Bitcoin, Monero, and about one or two other ones. And Monero, obviously, for the privacy reasons. But there's the problem I'd run into. I only used it for about a year initially, because it just got frustrating with the hard forks and issues with with their GUI wallets and such. But I had a hard time accessing my money at all. And then you just a few months back, I had someone make a donation to Pasnia with Monero. And still, like, I ran into, like, it was just, it took about an hour to get it converted over to Bitcoin, like to get it to actually not even get it converted, but just to get to the freaking money, to get to the XMR. So like, that's why like in terms of long term, and in terms of long term, Bitcoin seems to be it, because you can still spend the same exact Bitcoin, like 10 years ago. The exact same one, like you can still send that Bitcoin that you got back then. Whereas with any of these other projects that can go through a hard fork, your money may not be usable when you go to try to access it down in the future. So that's more kind of the economic thing, but at the same time, that does you mentioned the 400 gigabytes, and you can basically verify every single transaction that's ever occurred on the network. And as Max Hilbrand's talked about on this podcast a number of times, like where else in humanity can everyone come to agreement on anything? Well, you can on the Bitcoin blockchain, because every single person can go verify every transaction themselves. They can run their own node to verify that all the consensus rules are being followed. And then they can mine, they can contribute to the network in that way, and like everything is totally verifiable, and it just works. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's amazing. And again, that importance of not having, and this is Bitcoin's killer app, is again not having that figurehead, because still one of the reason I'm so anti-Ethereum to this day, and this should still bother people, I don't know why it doesn't, but years ago you had the DAO hack, quote unquote hack. It wasn't actually a hack, because the guy took whatever 50 million in ETH through the programming rules, through the rules that were programmed in it. So it's not really theft. But the point is, how did Vitalik, how did the Ethereum team respond? They rewrote history.
Yeah,
they said,
exactly.
Okay, that transaction never happened. And I'm like, wait, like who would trust any software like that? Especially when your money's involved, where history gets rewritten. Like, I mean, banks don't even necessarily do that, like that's madness. So, that alone, I mean, it's unforgivable. Like I could never, how could you ever trust a network like that? And you could say that, Solana wouldn't do that, or these people wouldn't do that. Yeah, I don't know, because you know what?
Well, I saw on Twitter. I don't know anything about
changes.
Solana, but all I've only seen it brought up on Twitter. Apparently, the network was down for days at a time, just recently. So, like, the Bitcoin network's never been down for days at a time. It's never been. I mean, more than maybe like I don't know. It's like 99.999% uptime in the past 10 plus years.
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, and part of that is well, I was just gonna say, I mean, part of that is Bitcoin has had 10 years of growth, and it's had a good slow growth. So the network has had time, to get to this level. But then that's part of the problem with a lot of new blockchain projects, is they want to scale instantly, infinitely. And the laws of thermodynamics are what they are. You can't do that. And that just speaks more to how it's just a money-making scheme for them, as to where, like with with what Satoshi had in mind, with what Bitcoin had in mind, it was, okay, here is something you can own that comes without anybody's permission but your own, you verifying the blockchain and whatever. That's all the permission you need. You don't need a paper from the government. You don't need anything from the government. And so in some ways, like it's so much more than money, even though that's really all I want it to do is just be digital gold. But in philosophy, it is so much more. And none of these other blockchain projects even talk like that. Like they just don't care, it's funny, the easiest argument for Bitcoin is read the white paper for Bitcoin, read the white paper for everybody else. Everybody else just sounds like they're part of the legacy system. Bitcoin sounds like, hey, let's get out of this shit. And I love that to death.
Yeah. Right there with you, man. Right there with you. And I guess just the last thing I'll mention on this, and we'll begin to kind of close out. But a couple of days ago, I was looking. We have a distillery, family distillery. I make liquor is my not real day job is what I call it, and they I handle a lot of their email marketing stuff, and so I in their email, and like one of the organizations they're subscribed to was talking about like NFTs for spirits. I was like, you've got to be effing kidding me. Oh. Like on one of these specialized like email lists. I was like, okay, so NFTs are basically like the Facebook of crypto now. Like it's just and that's that immediately from, and the only thing I knew about him before that was obviously there's a lot of talk on on crypto Twitter, Bitcoin Twitter, but it basically just like exchanging JPEG files online is kind of the gist of it, I guess. I don't know, to a certain extent. So like I don't know. Like we talk about all this stuff with Bitcoin, like all these, and then all of this other shit just seems silly and superfluous and not really worthwhile of time. But again, the projects that are worthwhile will rise to the top, like Library, like we talked about, Odyssey, and like ones that actually have value will be there. But a lot of this shit just seems silly, silly distractionary nonsense. But anyway, man, Yep, go ahead.
I was just going to say, two quick things on the NFTs. So actually as of we're recording this, my most recent episode was about an hour and a half totally on NFTs and just ripping them to shreds. But that's also something, even if there wasn't a great argument made for NFTs, Counterparty, on top of Bitcoin can do NFTs. There are people who sell NFTs that way. So again, like you don't even need anything else. You could just do it on Bitcoin. Fair. Why aren't more people doing NFTs on Bitcoin? Because it's not about NFTs being a good idea. It's about making a quick buck with someone else's bullshit blockchain. So anyway, just tossing that out.
Very good. Awesome. We've been going for a little over an hour, and I know you got a hard stop coming up. But I guess any
sure.
Before I let you go, any other closing thoughts on fortifying the digital second realm that you may not have thought of when we were talking about it before, or I guess on Bitcoin generally, or anything else? Any closing thoughts?
Yeah. Ironically, I guess I'll say that reining in your digital life is just so key right now. Like concentrate a lot more on the physical, we've talked about some of the solutions around, what you can do within the digital realm right now to try and resolve things. There's interesting projects happening like Meshtastic's T-Beam, where it's just these little USB connectable devices that can send, small amounts of data between each other over such an amount of range. Maybe that's something we can talk about in the future because I'm still testing them out. There's projects being worked on. There's projects that, and they're not just worked on, like they exist. You can hold them, you can buy them right now. And that's important to me. But really, something that I've learned in the tech world over the past 10 years that I've been doing my own show, is, boy, you got to concentrate on the physical. Like I love how you're saying, and I've listened to your episodes, how much you're concentrating on health. I've always felt that one of the real tactics on being invulnerable, against, or being more less vulnerable, to coercion, is, like just being healthy, outlive the state. And I think that's possible. Like if you concentrate on your health, especially on your mental health, because the digital realm, the tech world as it is, will drive you nuts. Spend 5 minutes on Twitter, let's see how long you stay calm. You know what I mean? Right. I'm sure you understand that. So, really, I think concentrating on health as much as you can is a really key thing, even though, here I am giving you tech solutions at the same time. Like that's always number one. Don't expect tech to resolve any of that. And I think it's the best thing that anybody can do is just work on their mental, physical health.
Yeah, right on. Cheers, man. Cheers. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And last thing before I let you go, let the listeners know where to find your podcast and anything else you're working on that you like to plug.
Sure. Yeah. So you just want to head up to sovryntech.com. That's SOV as in Victor, RYN tech, TECH.com. And, again, we've been going for 10 years strong, and we plan on going for another 10. So there's and lots of projects in the works, of course, but the best place to find out about all of them is checking in with the podcast, at sovryntech.com.
For sure. Awesome, man. Well, thanks so much for your time today. And we'll definitely have to get you back on, and it'll be a lot sooner this time. Maybe in a couple months we'll get something new scheduled and some projects or whatever. But yeah, we'll talk about that. But yeah, thanks so much for your time today, man. It was a lot of fun.
No, it's an honor. Appreciate it, and keep going, man. You're delivering great truth out there.
Hey, thanks, man. Appreciate it. So, all right, guys, there you have it. Brian Sovryn from the Sovryn Tech Podcast. Thanks again to him for coming on, and thank you for tuning in. Before I let you guys go, the second installment in Matthew Witecki's Brushfire Thriller series, 2048, was released a few weeks back with our book release live stream hosted live on Jitsi. And after an 8 or 9 month process from start to finish, it's great to have another terrific piece of anarchist fiction out for your delectation. You can snag 2048 alone by visiting libertyunderattack.com/2048, or pick up the Brushfire bundle at libertyunderattack.com/2048 bundle. Just check the show notes or libertyunderattack.com to find all of that. And we also just recently republished Carl Hess's important direct action focused book, Community Technology. To pick that one up, just visit libertyunderattack.com/Hess or check out the website for our full extensive catalog. Thanks so much for your time today. And always remember, Vonu is yours for the making, and the second realm is yours for the building. Cheers.
Because that's really the issue that we're dealing with these, ghost phones, ghost pads, whatever, is that there's no way that you can organize with other people and have these distributed tribes if you have a snitch in your pocket all the time. Mm-hmm. People are literally wearing wires all the time. They have a snitch in their pocket and they're trying to do clandestine things. That's never going to work. I'm focused on this project now because I really see how the unfettered flow of communication is what really has prompted this, shift in consciousness. And that if this can't continue this way and people can't communicate freely with each other, then all the distributed networks that have formed aren't going to be very effective, and they're not going to be able to do what they could do. If you can't communicate, especially when you're basically part of a dispersed tribe at this point, if you can't communicate without being monitored, it basically hamstrings anything going forward.
Step up your privacy and order a ghost phone today. Just visit libertyunderattack.com/ghost phone. Again, libertyunderattack.com/ghost phone. And make sure to keep a lookout for more ghost pads, privacy tools, freedom boxes, and more. libertyunderattack.com is the website. Liberty Under Attack Publications. Share your story, find your freedom.
.2048, the second volume in the Brushfire Thriller series, takes place in the not-so-distant future. In the second half of the 21st century, the War of Ideas took place. The creation of second realms and individualist decentralized freedom cells spread across geographical regions, and the practical ideas of liberty, voluntary interaction, and peace took hold. The Free Society in 2048 is loosely based on Samuel E. Konkin III's Phases of Agorism, in which the destruction of the state would be realistically accomplished through the establishment of pockets of free individuals, black and gray markets, and the spreading of the ideas of freedom and liberty, until the demand for an overarching state was no longer perceived as essential, and individualism and voluntary interaction prevailed. The original creators of the Freedom Cells who led the world to a better place are still scattered about, living their lives, including Maxine, the late Henry Tucker's love, and the now washed-up but stubborn punk rocker Warren, still reside in the Appalachian Mountains. Maxine's nephew, Vince, and his boy Tommy, who had been van nomads ever since Tommy's mom left to pursue a materialistic quest for fortune in the never-ending rat race, went to visit Auntie Max on her homestead on Jim Mountain Road. Although Max is very happy for the visit, she has an ulterior motive. Her close friend she met during her revolutionary days, Isaac Hopper, is trapped in a geographical area previously known as New York City, now known as the State Zone. The State Zone is one of only a handful of remnant states where an overarching power-hungry government rules over its citizens with aggressive force. Together, Warren, Vince, and Tommy team up and use their knowledge, including advanced hacking techniques, low-tech ciphers, IRC encrypted chat, and cryptocurrencies to infiltrate and evade the authorities in the State Zone and bring back Isaac to freedom. But their mission, the rescue of Isaac, Auntie Max's close friend and confidant, isn't going to be easy. They're up against a powerful authoritarian Hydra state, a massive surveillance apparatus, a relentless and murderous police state, and a propaganda arm that will not stop until extremist terrorists known as the Trio, Warren, Vince, and Tommy, are brought to justice. Will the trio pull off the rescue of Max's longtime friend, Isaac Hopper? Will the forces of good, free individuals, prevail against the statist forces of evil? Find out in the second volume of the Brushfire Thriller series, 2048, available exclusively via Liberty Under Attack Publications. Just visit libertyunderattack.com/2048. Again, libertyunderattack.com/2048, or snag them both in the Brushfire Bundle. libertyunderattack.com/2048 bundle. Liberty Under Attack Publications. Share your story. Find your freedom.